Somewhere in the frozen silence of the Himalayas, a mother stood at the edge of the ice knowing that staying meant losing her child, and leaving meant breaking every instinct she had ever known. Winter ruled the high Himalayas with quiet authority that left no room for mistakes. The mountains stood vast and indifferent, their jagged edges softened by endless snow, their silence broken only by wind slipping through stone. Life here moved carefully, every step measured against hunger, cold, and gravity. On one pale morning, beneath a sky stretched thin and colorless, the snow leopard mother watched her cub explore the edge of their world. His small body a soft contrast against the hardened land. The cub was young enough to trust the ground beneath his paws. He moved with clumsy confidence, ears twitching, tail flicking as curiosity pulled him forward. Ahead of him lay the frozen skin of a glacial lake, smooth and pale, reflecting the mountains like glass. To the cub, it was just another surface, another place to test his balance. To his mother, it was a memory of danger, a boundary rarely crossed. She paused, muscles tightening, her breath steady but alert. The sound came without warning. The ice did not simply break. It groaned, then split with a sharp crack that echoed through the valley. In an instant, the cub vanished beneath the surface, swallowed by black water so cold it burned. His cry cut through the air, raw and panicked, followed by frantic splashing as his small body fought the shock. The mother spun toward the sound, heart surging, paws skidding as she raced the edge of the opening. She lunged forward, reaching for him, claws scraping uselessly against the soft ice. The cub's head surfaced for a moment, eyes wide, breath coming in desperate gasps. She stretched farther, teeth snapping at empty air, but the ice beneath her weight answered with a low, dangerous groan. Thin fractures spidered outward from her paws.
Please,
Instinct screamed at her to stop. One
Just
more
listen
step,
to me.
she would join him in the water, and there would be no saving either of them. The mother pulled back, chest heaving, eyes locked on her struggling cub. His movement slowed, strength draining with every second spent in freezing lake.
Please listen to
She
me.
paced the edge, searching for a path that did not exist, for a solution the mountains refused to offer. This was a territory, a place where she was unmatched. Yet here she stood powerless against the cold. The rules that had kept her alive offered no answer. For a long, terrible moment, she remained frozen between two truths. Stay and watch him slip away beyond her reach, or leave, turning her back on his prize, running from the only place her heart demanded she remain. The choice tore against every instinct carved into her by generations of survival. Mothers did not abandon their young. Hunters did not flee when their own were in danger. And yet, the ice made a decision for her.
Begging you,
She
please
stepped away from the
listen to
lake.
me.
Once, then again, the cub's cries followed her, thin and fading, cutting deeper than the cold ever could. With a final glance back, she turned fully, muscles coiling, and ran, not away from danger, but towards something she had spent her life avoiding, toward the scent of smoke and would carry faintly on the wind, toward the presence of humans. As she disappeared over the ridge, the lake fell silent once more. The broken ice slowly settled. Beneath the surface, the cub clung to the edge, his small body trembling, unaware of the impossible choices Mother had made. Above him, the mountains watched without judgment, as they always had, holding their breath for what would come next, and hope lingered. The mother snow leopard moved to the mountains with a purpose that cut through fear. Her breath burned in her chest as she crossed ridges and narrow paths. She had only ever watched from a distance. The scents around her changed as she ran. Snow giving way to traces of smoke, old wood, and human presence. Every instinct warned her to turn back, to vanish into stone and shadow as she always had. But behind her, the memory of her cub slipping beneath the ice drove her forward. Faster than caution ever could, the ranger's cabin stood alone against the wind, a small structure dwarfed by the cliffs rising behind it. Inside, the ranger was finishing a quiet evening ritual, the kind built from decades of solitude. The fire crackled softly, tea steamed in a warm metal cup, and the world beyond the walls felt distant and contained. Then the sound came, a heavy thud against the door, followed by another, sharp and urgent. He froze, listening. This was not the wind. It was not falling ice. It was deliberate, his hand moved toward his coat without haste. Fingers closing around the familiar weight of preparedness rather than fear. When the knocking came again, stronger this time, he stepped closer to the door and peered through the small window. The sight stopped him short. A snow leopard stood outside, her pale coat dusted with frost, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She was not crouched or snarling. She was standing upright, pressing her weight against the wood, her eyes wide and fixed on him. He opened the door slowly, the cold rushing in. The leopard did not advance. She stepped back, then turned, moving a few paces away before stopping and looking over her shoulder. She vocalized softly, a strained sound that carried urgency rather than threat. The ranger felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went beyond logic. He had spent his life reading weather, tracks, and silence. This, too, was a language. He grabbed a length of rope and a wooden plank kept near the wall for emergencies. When he stepped outside, the leopard waited, then began to move, leading him down the slope. She stayed ahead of him, but never out of sight, pausing often to make sure he followed. The terrain was unforgiving. Snow crusted over uneven ground, the wind biting hard. The ranger's lungs burned as they descended toward the valley. When the lake came into view, the ranger understood immediately. The broken ice spread across the frozen surface like shattered glass. At its center, barely visible, a small shape struggled weakly. The cub's head surfaced for a moment, then dipped again, his movement slow and uncoordinated.
I'm begging you, please,
the mother
listen to
pacing the
me.
edge, her body taut, eyes flicking between the ranger and her cub. She did not interfere. She did not approach the water again. She waited. The ranger lowered himself onto the ice with care, sliding the plank ahead.
Please, I can explain everything.
The cold seeped through his
listen to
gloves
me.
and coat as the ice groaned beneath him. Every movement was deliberate. He looped the rope, extending it toward the cub with slow precision. When it settled around the small body, he tightened it gently and pulled, inch by inch, feeling the resistance of water and ice fighting him. At the edge, he dragged the cub onto solid ground. The mother rushed forward, stopping just short of him, her nose hovering inches from the cub's wet fur. The ranger worked quickly, pressing and rubbing, coaxing breath back into fragile lungs. Water spilled free, followed by a weak gasp. The cub shuddered, then breathed again. The mother did not touch him at first. She watched the ranger, her fear easing into something quieter. When she finally stepped closer, she licked the cub's face, slow and steady, grounding him in warmth and scent. The ranger sat back, exhausted, aware that something rare had passed between them. Trust had crossed a boundary neither could ever fully name, forged in cold and silence, where fear had given way to hope. The cub's breathing came back slowly, as if he were learning the world anew. Each rise of the small chest was shallow at first, uneven but real. The ranger wrapped his coat around the trembling body, shielding him from the wind that swept unchecked across the lake. The mother stayed close, her movements controlled now, her eyes never leaving her cub. She did not interfere. She seemed to understand that the danger had shifted, that warmth and stillness mattered more than instinctive urgency. They returned to the cabin together, moving carefully through the snow. The ranger carried the cub against his chest, feeling the fragile heat begin to return beneath soaked fur. The mother walked beside him, not behind, her presence steady and calm. Inside the cabin, the fire was stoked into a room filled with soft light and the scent of burning pine. The ranger laid the cub on a thick blanket near the hearth, rubbing him gently with a towel until his shivers eased. The cabin became something it had never been before. For years it had been a place of solitude, defined by routine and quiet. Now it held another rhythm entirely. The cub slept often, curled into himself, his small body rising and falling in time with the crackle of the fire. When he woke, he made faint sounds, uncertain and searching. Each time, his mother responded instantly, crossing the small space to him, licking his fur, grounding him with touch and scent. Days passed, marked not by clocks or schedules, but by subtle changes. The cub's steps grew steadier. His eyes brightened, curiosity returning in small, cautious ways. He pawed at shadows on a wall and tugged clumsily at the ranger's bootlaces. The ranger spoke little, but his presence was constant, He replenished the fire, brought water, and moved slowly, mindful of the unspoken agreement that held the room together. The mother watched everything. At first, she remained tense, muscles coiled even as she rested. But as the days softened, so did she. She lay down more often, her breathing deep and even. She allowed the ranger to sit nearby, without watching his every movement. Trust did not arrive suddenly. It settled in quietly, built from consistency and respect, from moments where nothing went wrong. Outside, winter loosened its grip. The wind carried hints of change, the snow growing heavier and wet. The ranger noticed the mother's attention drifting more often toward the window, her gaze following the line of the mountains beyond. She still hunted, slipping out before dawn and return hours later, her steps light and sure. Each time she came back, each time the cub waited. When spring finally came, it arrived without ceremony. The snow retreated inch by inch, revealing stone and earth beneath. The cub grew stronger, his movements confident now, his play rougher. One morning, the mother rose and stood by the door, her posture different. The ranger understood, without words. He opened the door wide, letting the cold air mix with warmth. They left together, climbing toward the high ridges where the air thinned and the land stretched open once more. At the crest, the mother stopped. She turned back to the ranger, her gaze steady and calm. She stepped closer, pressing her forehead briefly against his leg, a gesture both simple and profound. The cub followed, brushing against his hand before bounding ahead. The ranger watched as they moved away, their forms blending into rock and shadow. There was no sadness in the moment, only a quiet fullness. What had passed between them did not need to linger to remain real. The mountains reclaimed their own, and the cabin returned to silence. But the memory of shared survival stayed, carried in breath, warmth, and the knowledge that respect, once given, is never lost.